And thanks, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday morning masterclass from ModelOps. We have quite a lot of material to cover in the next 41 minutes. A couple of assumptions up front. It is assumed that you have worked for or have some relationship to AI initiatives in a large enterprise, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 diversified enterprise. That's the intended audience. The material broadly covers the foundational capability for enterprise AI called ModelOps, and I will describe what that is, kind of both at the high level and then with some detail. And we'll get, as Linda mentioned, a ModelOps Essentials Guide after this class, as well as the slides that I'm presenting, which we encourage you to share through your organization so you can help your organization align toward a necessary investment in ModelOps and enterprise AI in general. There's no requirement for you to be any particular person in terms of the relationship of production model AI initiatives. So maybe you're a data scientist or a line of business owner or a data ops or DevOps. But this capability is squarely focused on the technology center of a large organization. Generally the capability owned by the CIO or equivalence organization as a partnering capability for various data scientists and to enable machine learning and AI technologies to enhance specific business units and specific problems. So again, even if you're not in the technology center, I think it'd be worthwhile for you to understand how the technology center should be partnering with you and the types of capabilities. And if you are in the technology center, to help the technology center align with what capabilities are required to allow for the business units and the data science to get the most out of AI and ML initiatives. Okay, so with that, I'll kind of dive right in. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on who we are. You can find out who we are a variety of different ways. We are leading the category of ModelOps, this capability I'll be talking about today. We've been doing this for 4 years. Everything you hear today is based from our experience, helping very large organizations develop and mature and institutionalize and scale their ModelOps capability in the technology center, generally owned by the CIO or equivalence organization. So there's lots of ways to find out about ModelOp. That's not the intention today. Just to highlight this, and this is often as you're thinking about how your peers in your organization, how to help them understand where the ModelOps capability is focused. Here's some research from Gartner, and it was a study they did in 2018 of large enterprises. They asked the question, how many large enterprises were going to deploy AI and ML models into business, really production 24/7 production of models into specific applications, whether that's trading applications in financial services or insider trading, detection in financial services, or various types of insurance optimization problems in insurance, supply chain optimization problems in manufacturing, and et cetera. So a wide variety of large diversified enterprises were surveyed. 23% said in 2018 they would deploy AI and ML models into production 24/7. They resurveyed that population in 2019. Only 5% got deployed. And that trend has actually continued. So that highlights what we at ModelOp have been doing for 4 years and is becoming increasingly well understood that this is a general capability that the large enterprise has to have, which is how to productionalize AI models in how the technology center can provide a capability that partners with any of the variety of ML and AI and initiatives going on in the different business units, but have an enterprise-wide capability to get models into production at scale and govern them appropriately throughout their entire life cycle. So I'll talk about some details, but that just kind of very much highlights it. This is a problem that we've been helping large enterprises with for 4 years, but it's growing faster. We're busier than ever, and we have more and more large enterprises wanting to accelerate, especially in these particular times where it's very clear that probably now and going forward, there's never been a better or a more acute demonstration of why a large enterprise has to be even more responsive to potentially, very volatile conditions or operating environments that hadn't been fully anticipated before. So all of that is creating a sense of urgency to really get AI and ML models into business, into production 24/7. And there's real numbers associated with that. So this is very, very timely. In general, one of the challenges has been for that we've helped large organizations with is how to frame the problem of getting models deployed. Why is it that models aren't getting deployed? And there are really three broad classes of those problems. The first class is that models are not like conventional software. I will go into some detail about that today at different times, but that's really the critical understanding that has to be internalized by a large organization. Models are not like conventional software. DevOps is not adequate for models. And there really isn't, unless you've been working with us for a few years, most large organizations don't have the appropriate roles and rules of engagement to allow for AI initiatives to scale and be governed kind of holistically across the enterprise in a way that would allow for acceleration of the enterprise AI initiatives. So the solution to those problems is an enterprise capability owned by the technology center, generally reporting into the CIO, to be able to govern, monitor, and deploy models, no matter where they came from. Maybe those models were developed in data science tools like Dataiku, Jupyter, RStudio, Data Robot, H2O, fully inclusive of all of their business requirements. Many of the models for a variety of different regulated industries have to have very strict approvals to be put into production so that their scores are actually feeding real applications, like in credit scoring, for example. No redlining can happen, et cetera. So approvals, regulatory reports might have to be created. And of course, all of that needs to be auditable and queryable in terms of where the model has been and what exact business requirements it has been fulfilled in its entire operational lifecycle. Similarly, the technical requirements. Some of the models might have to be in the cloud because the consuming production scores is in the cloud and there's a latency requirement. Some of them might have to be in an on-prem situation because the data is restricted from a PII perspective. Others may require very specific proprietary runtime, like maybe some of the data pipelining was created in Dataiku's proprietary data pipelining tool. And so when deployed, that proprietary runtime has to be used, et cetera. So, and overall, we need to know where every model is in its life cycle so that, because as many of you know, these models might have been, when they're in production, they may be in production for years, certainly months. And in modern ML cases, very complicated retraining and concept and data drift requirements in production in systems that data scientists don't even have access to. So all of that kind of continuous monitoring has to be in place. So ModelOps is the kind of general category for that capability. Again, this is what we've been doing, but today, to make it easier for organizations to align around the necessity for this capability, it's very nice that organizations like Gartner and Forrester are starting to write widely about ModelOps as a capability. So this is some research from Gartner. It very clearly articulates the relationship of ModelOps, a 24/7 capability living in the technology center, generally reporting to the CIO, how that relates to data ops and DevOps and other operational capabilities. So we're certainly not the only ones talking about ModelOps. It's a thing, and there's plenty of resources out there. And if we can help you or your organization find more resources to talk about ModelOps generally, we're happy to do so. And again, that's what in the next 30 minutes, and I can't stress this enough, I'm really discussing ModelOps in a general way. I'll give you a very brief introduction of some specifics using our ModelOps Center, which is a ModelOps platform for the very large enterprise, but this is primarily about ModelOps in general. So in general, one of the most important topics is how the Technology Center organizes around this capability and what new roles are required to deliver this at scale and efficiency, and really be a foundational capability that will be leveraged throughout the entire journey of enterprise AI over the next few years, which again, all of our customers anyway are kind of doubling down on their investment in enterprise AI as a general capability. It seems like a more profound, potentially transformative capability that, that the enterprises maybe ever really invested in. It's much larger, for example, and more in terms of its impact than, say, big data was a few years ago. So it's really exciting and also challenging for a lot of organizations to align properly to make that investment at the speed that the market and other operating factors are kind of requiring today. So we're here to help with that. So this capability, deployment, governance, and monitoring, has to live within the CIO's organization. We kind of understand that today from experience. There are obviously the key operational capabilities, data ops, DevOps, and IT ops, that in most enterprises are pretty mature today. They're on the bottom. And then, of course, those are partner capabilities to the those data scientists that are embedded in the lines of business, solving very specific business problems with very specific data science tools and very specific data sets. And so that team, the data scientists embedded in the line of business, needs these partners and the partnering capability to ensure that those models, the candidate models, can really be deployed 24/7. And I just want to highlight that the data scientists working in the business units with those specific data sets, they may create hundreds of models and only 10 or 5% of those are really candidates for full-blown production. So what we're talking about here today is production models, not the design, exploratory data analysis, and all the data science capabilities that the various data science tools need to give the data scientists. This is about production requirements. And so a model, for example, might have different data requirements, technically speaking, in a QA environment on its journey to production. So for example, the data scientist might have used data that was lifted into a data platform like Alteryx, or coming off of a data lake type situation like Databricks. But when in QA, maybe the production data or the QA data that was not used in training, not the historical data used in training, but QA data, maybe coming from Oracle. And then maybe in production, the production scoring data is actually in Snowflake. So that would be one example of the kind of technical changes that can happen in a model through its journey toward production. Also, when a model gets designed, there'll be a lot of data science efficacy kind of metrics and other measurements, but in production, it may be most important to see how that model is affecting the actual top line of the business, which may be reported through a reporting tool like Tableau. So how do we merge from a monitoring and governance perspective, the kind of technical results of the model with the business results of the model in a way that's very clear to everybody why the organization made an investment in that type of data science. There's a lot, and that allows for a feedback mechanism in the overall enterprise about which lines of businesses are leveraging AI and ML technologies most effectively, which types of problems lend themselves to various types of algorithms or tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the variety of changes and requirements, both business and technical, for a model and its life cycle means there is a life cycle. And so what is highlighted is the top two new roles: the enterprise AI architect, whose job it is to very clearly detail all of the aspects of the life cycle in a way that can be automated at scale and fully governed by the whole organization. And then the ModelOps capability, which is an operational role that needs to be able to, come in every day and say, oh, are there any issues with these models? Are there new models that need to be put into production? Where are we? And help organize the whole process and triage any issues that happen with an operational capability for models. Not unlike DevOps, but specific to models and their challenges. So that capability, enterprise AI architect and a ModelOps engineer needs their own tools to ensure that they can design ModelOps lifecycles that are fully inclusive of all of the various business approval and technical alignment challenges for every model in their lifecycle. And for the operational team, the ModelOps folks, to come in and see, okay, which models are having issues? Where are we in the process? What kinds of expertise do we have? The various groups have to be brought in for a particular model, for example. And I'll show a brief example of this in detail with our ModelOps Center. But any particular solution needs to be able to deploy, monitor, and govern models, but really provide the capabilities to those teams, the ModelOps engineers and the enterprise AI architects, and allow models to come from anywhere on the left, move through any pieces of the existing investment in a large enterprise and leverage it fully. For example, in the CI/CD investments, agile investments, various data platform investments, and of course, deliver the production scores to the reliably to the business applications that are enriched by AI and ML. And then finally, to really round out the enterprise AI capability, tie that back into BI and other analytics tools that are monitoring the top lines of various lines of businesses and organizations. All the time capturing key performance indicators for this ModelOps capability. How many models do we have in business? How fast can we get models into business? Which business units are getting more models in? What types of technologies are being used by the different business units and data scientists? Those are all the kinds of ModelOps KPIs that can assess where your organization is in terms of its maturity. So some sort of capability is required. One of the challenges is getting, in our experience, has been fully getting the organization to internalize the need for a ModelOps capability. This is much less of a challenge today because now there's kind of a, as I mentioned at the very top, Gartner and others have been talking broadly about something that all of our customers have experienced somewhere in their maturity curve, usually early on in their engagement with us. And we see in all of the enterprises that are talking to us today, which is something called model debt, which is simply that experience that very good models are created in the lines of business that are potentially good candidates for production, but there isn't a standard model representation. There isn't a standard process for deploying and monitoring them and being able to refresh them appropriately when they're running 24/7 in environments that, generally data scientists have no credentials to get into and are very sensitive to the operating part of the business. So that's model debt. And, ModelOps should eliminate that. But also start to take care of the concern of shadow AI. There's just so many valuable AI and ML tools and processes coming up in various parts of the business. Having a ModelOps capability allows for some sort of a reasonable management of that while allowing that to flourish appropriately as the enterprise kind of continues on their enterprise AI journey. Okay. So now I want to go through a resource that we provide to you for you and your organization to help you understand more about ModelOps in general. Some of the things I covered already are covered in some detail in that, and also help your organization align in terms of the various functions, who should be concentrating on what aspect of their job to enable the newer roles of ModelOps and enterprise AI architects to flourish in terms of delivering a ModelOps capability to your organization. So what I'd like to do is go through this in excruciating detail and give you a test at the end to see how well you listen. No, I'm just kidding. There's no test at the end. I'm just going to highlight quickly aspects of the essentials guide to help guide you into maybe where you want to look more closely, or which aspects of the guide you might want to share with colleagues, all as an aid to help your organization align around the ModelOps capability. So it's a pretty straightforward guide that gives you all the best practices for either embarking on a ModelOps capability journey, or for most large enterprises, really modernizing operational capabilities and adding the ModelOps capability to really allow machine learning and AI technologies to have this profound impact on the business. So, large organizations already know how to build models and deploy them, but the change is the AI and ML technologies has created a faster frequency and a more profound potential effect with a lot higher complexity, and both business and technical challenges are much more, they can have a much higher level of complexity overall. So that's what ModelOps will help you with. So who should read this? Literally everybody I talked about, from the technology center executives and other executives, risk management, for example, and governance and compliance executives, even the CEO. I think it's appropriate to see, because again, enterprise AI is probably the most transformative investment that CEOs are going to make in the large enterprise over the next few years. So having the foundational capability is critical, all the way through the current operating capabilities, the data scientists, obviously, who are benefiting directly from the ModelOps capability, the presence of a ModelOps capability by being able to get their models deployed very, very quickly, efficiently, and confidently, that they meet all of the technical requirements and data science requirements and mathematical requirements. And finally, kind of teams overseeing risk exposure and other things. So everybody that I mentioned is really probably worthwhile to at least skim this essentials guide. It really highlights the two new roles. So maybe you're somebody who wants to become a ModelOps engineer or an AI architect, or somebody who would be qualified or good, be interested in evolving into that role. I think this guide helps frame what that is. So encourage you to really broadly circulate this to a variety of different roles. And now I'll just cover a few of the things. One of the things we highlight is the need for the organization to align. If it's just us or you talking, there's like, this is a large organization, Fortune 100, Fortune 500. In order for, as everyone knows, in order for a large organization, excuse me, to fundamentally invest in a core capability, all the outside kind of trusted advisors should be consulted to see whether this is something that's important. And there's just a lot of research today in 2020. Not true 4 years ago, as we were really at the forefront of helping kind of the most now mature enterprises have a real enterprise AI capability and ModelOps. But today, there's just a ton of research. We can help you and direct you to that to help you and your organization align on kind of what enterprise AI is and the importance of ModelOps. I can't stress this enough. The people challenge is probably the core challenge to overcome in terms of alignment of both the mission, which is to provide a fundamental capability that allows for enterprise AI to flourish in the organization, as well as the kind of details about who's going to do it. A very quick story, when we started a few years ago, it wasn't clear who would own ModelOps as a 24/7 capability. We've been, most of us on our team have been servicing the large Fortune 500, Fortune 100 for, the last couple decades, and, very critical 24/7 operational capabilities. So we had a suspicion about who would own this, but, we keep an open mind. I think today is just no question. The technology center, the CIO, has to field this capability to partner with all of the exciting initiatives happening in the business units around modeling and data science and AI and ML. But this is really a technology center capability, ModelOps. I went into a lot of detail on kind of how that relates to existing capabilities as well as the new roles. But I can't stress enough about designing KPIs for those new roles. Measure the success of ModelOps engineers and enterprise AI architects in a very, very concrete way. And it's a good time to just briefly mention being very concrete has been the most important aspect for increasing and accelerating maturity in ModelOps in our experience. Be concrete about what models you're talking about when you start to talk about a ModelOps capability. Be concrete about which roles and exactly which processes, DevOps, ITOps, compliance are involved. So get very concrete and design KPIs, key performance indicators, to measure progress in a very tangible way. And I think you'll find that everything will progress that much faster. So there's a lot of information for the different teams in this essentials guide. I encourage you to look through that. You can ask us for more detail on any of them. We're fully competent in all of those different areas. So we're happy to sit down with any special area data scientists, for example, and explain to them exactly which parts they need to really worry about and which parts they should demand from the enterprise, the technology center partner. This goes into some detail around the two core new roles, the enterprise AI architect and the ModelOps engineer. So, if you're interested in that, or you think somebody who's interested in that, I encourage you to look at that. And that actually is a good segue to recognizing that one of the key differences from ModelOps and DevOps is the level of automation that's required to scale, especially given the complex business requirements in the lifecycle. Again, approvals, regulatory reports that have to be generated, the ability to audit things from who approved this or touched this model, all the way from the highest level of business approval down to the lowest level of technical alignment. All of those things, and data and how that fits with data governance, for example. All of those processes need to be designed in detail, but also fully automatable. And if it's not automatable, it's not a foundation for enterprise AI, where the scale and automation is only going to increase over the next few years. And I'll give you some example of that. So the ability to design automations to govern, monitor, and deploy models is exactly what an enterprise AI architect does. And that should be in some sort of system which actually coordinates that in an automated fashion at scale. And I'll show you an example of that with ModelOps Center. There's a lot about ModelOps and DevOps and the differences of those. Again, that's a whole class in itself we can talk about, and we've published quite a bit about that, and we'll continue to publish quite a bit more. In the end of the day, you really have to, the thing that will focus the organization in our experience is get those requirements down. Talk to the different constituents and make sure it's very clear the requirements to deploy, execute, and govern models. Have some sort of concrete solution that allows the ModelOps team and the enterprise AI architect to do that, something like our ModelOps Center, for example. And that leads to following an actionable blueprint, which really allows you and your organization to assess, and however we can help do this, we're happy to do it, help assess where you are on a maturity model for ModelOps across strategy, deployment, which means kind of the fundamental investment, deployment, monitoring, and governance. Of course, all of our existing customers are pretty mature, so all of this comes from our experience working with them and maturing their ModelOps capability. But most organizations are somewhere on this curve, depending on the level of model debt they have or the concern they have around shadow AI. So, there's quite a lot of detail here to help you self-assess where you are, and in any way we can help you assess that, we're happy to do that as part of our general service to help folks understand the importance of a ModelOps capability and where you are and where to focus. So that's the Essentials Guide. I encourage you to look through that and circulate it widely. One thing I really want to stress in terms of the difference between, say, DevOps and ModelOps. ModelOps, just to state the obvious, I think people understand this, but what we found is there's so many people doing so many, very already valuable things for the organization. Stating the obvious is often really critical in aligning the whole organization to the ModelOps capability. ModelOps manages models, which are very accountable to the business. If a model scores are wrong in production, maybe the organization is facing the wrong way on a big trade, or maybe they're out of compliance for a certain regulation, or maybe there's, some sort of supply chain is unoptimized in a way that's very damaging to the business, or maybe there can be, extremely competitive in their part of the business. It is a business accountable capability, much more so than DevOps, measurable more so than DevOps, but it's just as technical, if not more technical than DevOps, and has a stronger requirement for automation. So it's a business process that ultimately that the CIO has to understand. Excuse me. This is a quick study that one of our engagements did, just refreshing a credit card customer acquisition model every month versus every year. So just kind of increasing the frequency of refreshing while modernizing the algorithm that had been being used to do that. And so just doing that in production, they're able to calculate a benefit of over $90 million in 3 years. So that's kind of both the challenge and the exciting part, or the kind of motivating part of ModelOps, is that it really impacts, top line numbers. And if you can capture that in a meaningful way, it should help you help the organization drive a very fundamental investment in that. So again, I can't stress enough that anytime you talk to your colleagues about ModelOps, you will have more, in our experience, you will have a better, you will improve their alignment to you if you are very, very concrete. So I just want to go through a couple of concrete things. Now, this is a ModelOps Center demo, very brief demo. We can give much longer demos. The nature of this demo is to demonstrate to you what a ModelOps engineer does, kind of, very quickly, and what an AI enterprise architect do. This is the type of tool that those roles need to use. The ModelOps engineer would come to a console like this that is an operational console that says, oh, I have 19 models in production in their full life cycle. So this is not the number of models that are in a particular business unit that are, going through some sort of design process, like model creation process. That's what a data science tool would do. Maybe only 5 or 10% of those models actually are really even candidates for real full-blown production. So some sort of a console say how many models are operating in production across all the different IT environments and being fed by the various data feeds and servicing the various critical applications. That's what a ModelOps solution like ModelOps Center provides. So you can look through all the different models that are registered. You can see how they're performing. That's what a ModelOps engineer will do, and I'll show you a quick demo of that in a second. But before I get there, the enterprise AI architect would have had to already design for every model, the critical life cycle that includes all approvals, any kind of complicated retraining, any kind of governance or compliance runs. So here's a credit fraud deployment model, for example, and it has everything detailed in a way that can be easily loaded into a tool like ModelOps Center and fully automated and tracked. Its whole life cycle. So this is the kind of concrete assets that an enterprise AI architect should be able to design, and those should be immediately automatable without any kind of translation. So in our case, ModelOps Center takes a standard for designing these types of automations called BPMN, and you can see that this can then allow the model to gracefully move in an automated fashion through its full production lifecycle, as well as these can be changed as the organizational requirements change, but in a very concrete, detailed way where everybody can see exactly what the changes are, how it's going to happen, et cetera. So that's the kind of thing an enterprise AI architect would use. A ModelOps engineer, on the other hand, would come in the day and say, okay, there are 20 models moving through their life cycles. What are they doing? Are they doing production scoring? Look, here's some test failures. Like that's usually an issue for production models because it could be, again, we're facing the wrong way on a trade or something terrible is happening. So let's see what this is. I'm a ModelOps engineer. And, oh, my F2 score is less than 60 on this particular test. So it shows when it was run. I can look at this. But remember, the role I'm playing here is a ModelOps engineer. I'm trying to understand where all the models are that are in production 24/7 are in their life cycle and make sure I can coordinate any activities around them. I don't have to know in detail what these models are. Some of them may be in production for months or even years. So, okay, this F2 score is down. So that's not good. I'm a ModelOps engineer. I don't know who the developer is, but I want to notify the developer. So that had to have been captured in the model registration process. So I can notify the developer. That should go to some enterprise, Jira or other kind of workflow tool. In this demo, I just use our little demo tool, but we're fully integrated in any enterprise workflow assets this way. Oh, okay, now I'm a data scientist and I see that backtest has failed. So let me look at that. Hey, yeah, I remember this model. I designed this like a couple months ago, the XGBoost model, but you know what? I actually, right after that, I designed a lasso model that's better, and I actually even registered it. That's really what should be in production. Let me take ownership of that, and I'll even begin work on this. But I don't want to work in a tool like this. I'm a data scientist. So let me open up maybe the tools I like to work in, like Jupyter, could be Dataiku, whatever. And as long as I have the extensions for ModelOps Center in my tool, and ModelOps Center provides extensions for all the major data science tools and workbenches, then I can say, okay, great. Now let me grab this, and I know I already registered that model into ModelOps Center, so it should be easy to kind of bring that into the production scoring if I follow all the right processes, which has already been designed by the enterprise AI architect, so I don't have to stress about it. I know that that's already in ModelOps Center, and nothing bad will happen if I just do my part. So this looks right. So my part right now is just to submit this model. That's great. And then if we go back to the model lifecycle for this particular model, and we can see this. Oh, here's this green dot. This is a model that was submitted by a data scientist waiting for production and technical alignment to actually get fully deployed, but it needs to be approved first. This particular model needs to be approved. So now I can put on a kind of an approver hat and say, oh, okay, I need to approve this model. Let me take a look at this. All right, yeah, that looks good. Let me look at the source code. All of the various technical requirements are captured. Our plugins interrogate the various data science platforms to make sure that all the technical requirements are captured so they can be aligned properly when put into production. But really, I want to check, how does this new model compare with the model that actually failed, kind of side by side? So let's take a look at that and go through a side-by-side comparison. Now I'm a prover, so I can, evaluate these things reasonably. Oh yes, the F2 score of the new lasso model is better. Oh look, it even has like some explainability metrics, which the old model didn't have. Bias even looks better. This is definitely a better model. So let me take ownership of this and let me approve the model. Okay, great. Now we can go back into the model lifecycle. You can see the model, there's no more green dot here. It clearly got technically aligned to a runtime and deployed into production. So we should, if a model ops engineer should be able to see, or even the approver can see, oh yes, here's that lasso model. It was fully aligned with a particular endpoint. This happens to be a REST model. We can even dive into that, ensure that that was the model that was deployed. All of the technical alignments were done. This is REST, not batch or streaming. And even look at a live view of the model. Exactly how did that model get in production? This is fully auditable. Now, if there are any issues, we know who approved what kinds of alignment happened, all of the things that are required, and this is a fully automated process. And so, and then any metrics, like, here's CPU utilization. This is a RESTful model, so it's only responsive. Maybe there's, maybe there's other models that are streaming, for example, like this one is Kafka model, and we might have different metrics. They might have business metrics aligned with this, but we may be able to see throughput and other things on streaming models. So that should give you a sense of the type of automation and scale and governance that a model ops capability should give you, and very specifically the types of tools that an enterprise AI architect needs to design model ops lifecycles that can be automated, and what kind of operational capability and console and model ops engineer needs to be able to assess what's going on and involve all the appropriate supporting capabilities for any given model that's in production at any given time. This is very, very fast kind of general overview, but we're happy to spend more time with you on any of those various pieces. Okay, so this is what we do. we're the world's leader in helping very large enterprise develop a ModelOps capability, mature a ModelOps capability, improve a ModelOps capability, and fully scale and govern that at enterprise levels. So please, we're at your disposal. We have lots of educational resources, and we have lots of different ways to engage to help you and help your organization develop the foundational capability for a much larger calling of enterprise AI, which will only be increasingly important in our experience for the very large diversified enterprise. Thank you very much. And if this was of use to you, please, feel free to invite your colleagues or other people you think would benefit from this session. I'll be giving it for the rest of the week. And then we have lots of materials online, and there's lots of other ways that we can help you engage. We're at your disposal. I appreciate your time today.